Welcome back. You're watching NewsX. I'm Uday Pratap saying the United States election, which will be the 60th quadrennial presidential polls, is all set to be held on the 5th of November 2024. The US elections have already seen a lot of drama unfold before them. The incumbent president, Joe Biden, who is a member of the Democratic Party, initially ran for re-election and became the party's presumptive nominee while facing little opposition. However, Biden's performance in the June 2024 debate intensified concerns about his age and health and led to calls from within his party for him to leave the race. Although he remained adamant initially, he later gave in to the demands of his own party and withdrew on the 21st of July and endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris, who became the party's nominee. Biden's predecessor, Donald Trump, a member of the Republican Party, is now running for re-election for a second non-consecutive term after losing to Biden in 2020. In this episode of Statistically Speaking, we are trying to find out about how much an average Indian knows about the elections that are going to take place in the United States of America. Joining us live at this point is Pradeep Kapoor, former diplomat. We also have Adit Kothari, founding member, Indic Society. Robinder Sachdev, international affairs expert, is live with us. We also have Professor Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, joining us live as well. Let me make a start with you first, Professor Nalapat. How important is this election in the United States of America going to be for India? How concerned should Indians be about the outcome of the polls?
Well, I think Indians obviously would have concern about the outcome of the polls for the simple reason that the policies of a Trump-Vance administration are not likely to be the same policies as the Harris-Walz dispensation. Quite frankly, Donald Trump is gaining the edge, and mainly because of two individuals. One is President Biden, and the other is U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland. The way that Biden has gone after Trump, demonizing him, and the way that Merrick Garland has basically tried his level best to send Trump to jail. Well, look, Merrick Garland may be an outstanding jurist. I'm told he's a very fine judge. But in politics, you have the underdog syndrome and you have the sympathy factor. And the way Trump has been sought to be sent to prison, persecuted, his assets have been taken over, there's a huge sympathy wave for him. And I think that basically kept him going. Trump himself, after talking so much about getting Hillary Clinton in jail, absolutely did nothing to her, and she just faded away. Trump would have faded away, but for the immense amount of effort that's been spent by Garland and the Biden administration to get him in jail. So I think, quite frankly, Uday, the advantage, in my view, is with Trump, and the reason for that is, secondly, Kamala Harris. I mean, in a fast-changing world, you need to know what the president's flexibility and adaptability is. In other words, you need to get to know the president. Now you're seeing Kamala Harris in a scripted form. Till about 10 days ago, she was saying, oh, well, she's basically going to be, all of Biden's policies, most of them, she was with them. But now she suddenly changed her tune and said, no, it may be too late in the day. The fact of the matter is, Biden dropped out for good reason. And he ought not to have stood, frankly. He should have been a one-term president, like Donald Trump, if he wins this election, should be a one-term president. But the reality is that she was handed the baton very late. And she has not so far been able to define herself. She's been far too loyal to Biden and, more importantly, to his legacy. And I think these two factors, and Trump himself has shown what Kennedy would call a profile in courage. The man has stood up to the most terrible adversity he has ever probably faced in his life, and he's including that assassination attempt, and he stood up very bravely and boldly to that. So I think, frankly, Americans like that kind of spirit, and I think that is going to, in my view, Trump has got the edge in this election. And I think we'll have to wait, of course, till November 5 to check whether that is there. There's no doubt he made a big mistake in challenging the results of the election. But the fact is the way people have gone after him in this administration has created a huge sympathy wave for him. And frankly, that's not to the benefit of Harris at all, who has kept on repeating the same charges and accusations against Trump that Biden did and which made Biden fade out. Thank you.
All right, let me in fact now put out the results of this survey that NewsX has done now. Are you aware that Indian American by the name of Kamala Harris is contesting to be the US president? That's the first question we asked our respondents. 57% said yes, 42% said no, and 1% said they can't say. Now, the next question we asked them was, who do you think is ahead in the US polls? Kamala Harris, 44% people responded that they think Kamala Harris is ahead. 51% people responded that Donald Trump is ahead. And 5% people said they can't say. We then went on and asked them who will be a better president for the United States-India relationship. Kamala Harris, 42% people said they believe Kamala Harris will be better. 52% people said they believe Donald Trump will be better. 1% people said they can't say. The next question we asked was, who is a better friend to India? 22% people said the United States of America is. 4% people said it's Canada. 4% people said it's the UK. 66% people said it's Russia. And 4% people said it's China. What is your impression of America as a country? We asked our respondents. 15% said excellent. 51% people said good. 22% people said average. 9% people said poor, and 3% people said very poor. Well, let me take that response to Pradeep Kapoor. Pradeep Kapoor, what do you make of some of the findings of the survey in terms of course, who people believe will be better for India, who people believe is ahead currently, and what people believe overall of the India-US relationship vis-a-vis other countries?
I think that is a very good reflection of the current thinking amongst the people of India, and it is quite justified in terms of the past track record and what has happened, because with the Republicans, historically, we have seen that the relations are not the best between, are the best between India and US compared to the Democrats, traditionally, historically. Because I remember in the early 90s when I was Deputy Secretary Americas in the Ministry of External Affairs, the then Foreign Secretary, Mr. J.N. Dixit, had asked for a very detailed, granular analysis of our relations for the last 45, 50 years. And at that stage, it had emerged quite clearly. While the public perception was that Democrat presidents are more, favorable to India and better for India. But when we analyzed it year by year, action by action, meeting by meeting, it became very clear that while the Democrats were in power in the US, the relations would be very bad. There would be resolutions against India in the US Congress, in the US, Senate, Parliament. But when the Republicans were there, the entire relation, the gamut of relationships would improve very significantly. Now, the situation on the ground here is also very complex currently. I am here in Washington, D.C., and what I see is that while the polls are predicting either a very tight race or that Donald Trump is marginally ahead in some cases and Kamala Harris is marginally ahead in other polls, but the feeling that I get sitting here is that Kamala Harris is quite ahead of Donald Trump. The election day will prove what is going to be the final outcome. But the youth, the enthusiasm amongst the youth, for example, is very high for Kamala Harris. The financial resources which are being raised by the two candidates, Kamala Harris is getting much more support. The volunteer base of Kamala Harris is increasing very significantly. So there are so many indicators on the ground. Another very important marker is that the Islamic part of US, the Islamic lobbies and others, they have signed an agreement or a document saying that there would be equal sharing of power with the Democratic administration. On the other hand, Pakistani American caucus has endorsed Donald Trump. Now, how much of relevance we can give to that document and whether they actually go out and vote for Trump, as we have seen in the case of BJP and Indian Muslims. Whether even few votes will be cast from that community for Trump is a very big question mark. But if Trump were to win in any case, then they will go up to him and say that now we demand some response and favorable actions from your administration. So those sort of issues are going to be very much prevalent in the thing. There are a lot of factors which are impacting this election in a very big way. The immigrant issue is very, very massive because the number of immigrants which have come in is in tens of millions already. And many of them are trying to see whether they can vote illegally in these elections. Most of them are in favor of Democrats. So the Republicans are trying to make a big hue and cry about it. There is also the fact of the economy. A lot of money is being pumped into the economy. There are many organizations, including those run by Indians, and many Indians who have been appointed in positions by the Biden administration since the start of this year to have massive budgets of a couple of billion in so many cases to spend before October, so that there is an impact of job creation. There is a feeling, there is an atmosphere that the economy is doing well. The petrol prices at the gas pumps, in spite of the wars in the Middle East and Russia-Ukraine, have been going down very significantly in the last few weeks before the elections.
Absolutely.
Just to make people comfortable that the economy is not doing badly at all, even though grocery prices have gone up again.
Absolutely.
They are trying to bring down inflation. Back to you, Uday.
Absolutely. I'll come back to you. Let's get in the others as well for their quick take on the findings of this survey. Adit Kothari, what do you make of these survey results? The picture that they are throwing up about the Indians' perspective on the candidates in the US election.
So it's a very, myopic way of looking at it. We Indians like to do that. And somewhere or the other, because of the linkages that we have between India and United States, the personal stakes that families have, that individuals have, Ambassador Kapoor made a comment about immigration. Immigration is a big, massive issue for Indian Americans, especially the ones who are living there, working within the IT sector. We all know how difficult, situations can get for them. From that perspective, the Democrats do seem a bit favorable to the Indian Americans, because they do talk about the H-1B visas. I think Harris has made it, her self goal to basically expand the H-1B visa as well, to ensure that, more Indian immigrants, typically coming in from a sort of a technocrat background, do get encouraged in the United States. Whereas on the other side, Donald Trump is obviously not seen as favorable to immigration policies as such. So yes, there will be sort of resentment from that perspective. But if we look at it from an India-centric perspective, larger India, the sort of interests of India on a global stage, I think people have come out and said that that Donald Trump is probably going to be more favorable, because as we know that the Democrats have played those double games and the sort of games of hypocrisy for ages. Even now, as we talk about the Democrats here, they are saying that we are very happy with how things are going with the Vikas Yadav case. India is cooperating really well, and on the second day, there comes another sort of a surprise for us. So that sort of hypocrisy, that sort of double standards has been played by the Democrats, whereas from a Donald Trump perspective, because he puts in a lot of personality into his politics, and he comes out as a straight shooter. So if he doesn't like something, or if he has doubts about something, he will clear that out. He will not mince words. He likes to call a spade a spade. He doesn't believe in that political correctness. So I think it's rather better for India to work with somebody who doesn't harbor that sort of political correctness, and exactly knows where your red lines stop. There.
Right. Robinder Sachdev also with us at this point. Robinder, what is the Indian viewpoint on the upcoming elections, of course, in the United States of America, and what's the kind of snapshot you're able to take from these results of this survey that we put out to various citizens of the country?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, overall, the survey that you put out, I think absolutely does convey, I would think, also how Indians think about America. The only thing is, I was a little bit surprised that your survey showed only 52% want Trump and 42% want or think of Harris. I think the number in India would be much more, much larger number of people would say that Trump would be good for India versus Harris. That's, fine. Now, 3 points. One, as to Harris or Trump. I do not know. The race is very complicated, as all our eminent panel have said. I will just say one thing. There's a professor of mine, Alan Lichtman. Some of you may have heard or read about him. He has been predicting based on a model, not opinion polls and all. Since 1984, he developed a model to predict presidential elections. His model has proved absolutely right all since 84, barring the 2000 Gore Bush due to the, whatever. Lichtman himself is a Democrat. In 16, he said, I'm a Democrat, but my model shows Trump will win, Trump, whatever. This time around, he puts around 3 months before the elections. So this time around, I think on September 5th, his op-ed was carried by the New York Times. And long and short, Lichtman says Kamala Harris will win the White House. That's one, of what he says. We don't know. Now coming to, yes, I mean, it's a very, very intense election. The other thing is, whosoever wins, I think you'd also asked earlier, where and how will be America. America really, truly is maybe at a fork in a road. Okay, if Trump wins, it could go down one path, and if Harris wins, it would be, a split path or another path. Regarding India and the Republicans, yes, overall, yes. The perception and the reality also is that Republican administrations have been more, more conducive to India, let's put it that way. And Democrats have been, we have to see, Democrats is a party rooted in the sense of liberal social justice, human rights more, etc., etc. So obviously they'll be, picking up those issues. Nuclear non-proliferation, they were the champions. They are, I mean, as a core ideology. So of course, when we're doing something on nuclear, they will stand up. So yes, Republicans have been good and positive with India. And Trump will definitely be a much better, friendly, president with India, I would say, compared to Harris. Harris is an activist. And she really, I mean, if you look through her career, she's an activist and she'll be very active president, what I've seen. Now, but there's a twist to it, I think. Bush was a great friend with India. He initiated the nuclear deal, US-India nuclear deal, 2005, right? But he, if not blundered, took the wrong decision to go after Iraq on the case of weapons of mass destruction, right? That's sort of a false case. And that kind of, set, I think, the whole of Middle East on fire, virtually, one could say. And we are suffering the impacts of that even now, I would say. Okay. So a good friend may be a great friend with me, but that friend, if he or she goes and does something else, which also affects us, then it becomes a bit complicated. So Republican candidates, okay, Trump, fine. Trump could go and make a grand deal with China. Trump could do it, by the way, right? Make a grand deal with China. Remember, before his presidency, he was doing that. You cover up the deficit of $200 billion, buy more agri-goods with me, trade deal balanced out, fine. He could make a grand deal with China. And then, consequently, what? India, where are we? So they could be, or he could initiate a war. I don't know. But the point is that a good friend is a blessing. But a good friend at times when he does something else, ends up, impacting you. Back to the US, yeah, I mean, that's where it's a very tight, intense race, become very complicated. And as I think Ambassador Kapoor was saying, Kamala Harris has actually, she's outperformed. She's raised over $1 billion in these last 3 to 4 months, which is substantially more than Trump. And many of it is small dollar donations under $200. The activist base is rising, no doubt. The point is, it's no use for them to preach to the choir. Of course, they want the choir, everyone to get out and vote. That's the first biggest challenge of both the candidates, that people may be supporting them, saying, yeah, but go out and vote. That is one of their, their base, which is a defined base. But then the other is the swing, quote unquote, votes or the undecideds. How to kind of, bring them into your camp. That is a huge challenge. But once again, I'll come back to Lichtman's model, In his model, his conclusion actually is that the campaigning period doesn't matter. The last 6 months of an intense presidential campaign, per his model, it shows that it does not matter because the matrix that he chooses, he chooses how has the White House been doing, any major scandal, any major foreign something. He's got 13 points. So if you look at that and that model, the last 6 months of billions of dollars, advertising money and all that these guys do, it does not matter. It does not affect actually. Okay, but that's that. So therefore, it's an intense period, much money being spent, and it's complicated out there now.
Yes, absolutely. Let me, in fact, take that quickly back across to Professor Nalapat as well. Professor Nalapat, what do you make of the fact that obviously people do believe that Trump is would be a better friend of India? Many Indians predicting Trump's win as well in the elections, according to our survey. Also, some actually saying that, of course, relations are good with the US, but Russia is a better friend currently.
Well, I'd like to say, Uday, that elections are very significantly fought on the basis of raw emotion. And where Trump is concerned, he has said, I'll give a green card to any Indian student in a US university who graduates. He's gone that far. And the fact of the matter is, Indians are needed in the US. What he's talking about is illegal immigration, a huge influx of refugees from all kinds of countries. You've got, countries that are defined as terror supporters by the United States government. You've got China. A large number of Chinese have crossed the border. Many more are waiting to cross the border. So what he's talking about is illegal immigration, not a check on immigration as such, because that would be quite absurd from the point of view of the growth of the United States. Secondly, war. The reality is that Trump is making the point that he could have prevented a war. And as far as China is concerned, his implicit point is that I'll make sure the Chinese get the message that they better not invade Taiwan. So you have the situation in Ukraine, you have situation in Gaza, you have all kinds of activity taking place. Neither in Ukraine nor in Gaza has Biden's diplomacy been of much help. But of course, I must say that Biden has done a good job in terms of ensuring, for example, fleet protection and other items, and a tremendous boost to the Ukrainians. But many Americans are saying, what about us? You're giving money to Ukraine. That's the point Trump is making over and over again. That's the point Vance is making. That's the point that people like Tulsi Gabbard, who are very key speakers on behalf of Donald Trump, they're making that, yes, what about North Carolina? What about, Oregon? What about Ohio? What about California? Why isn't that money going there? Why is it going to Zelensky? They don't say Ukraine, they say Zelensky. And the fact is, it is illogical to expect that Zelensky would ensure that the Russians be pushed back to the 2014 line. It is illogical to expect that Israel is going to stop. Now they realize an existential threat. So I would still say emotion works in favor of Donald Trump, and Kamala Harris better raise that kind of emotion. Otherwise, Alan Lichtman is going to be proved wrong a second time around.
All right, let's leave it at that. My thanks to our guests for joining us on this broadcast. It's time for a very short break.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.